Hello, wine lovers. If you're one who likes stories of rising from adversity, like a phoenix from the ashes, and if you happen to be a history buff who enjoys a sparkling wine, you're going to like today's podcast as I travel on the wine road.
No, we are still feeling the effects. It's a difficult time. But we're optimistic that in the end that we'll come out of this feeling good about what we've done in the past and the future,
The fête, or the party, in Limoux, which is a little town near Carcassonne. It's the oldest and longest contiguously running Mardi Gras in the world, actually.
Coming up on today's podcast, I have an interview that I'm thrilled to be sharing. Family member and owner of Paradise Ridge Winery in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, joins me to share the news of their reopening following the 2017 wildfires. Rene talks candidly and shares quite a bit of detail about the new tasting room and intriguing changes they're making. Then you'll hear about the rich history of Mardi Gras, which began centuries ago in Limoux, France, which is the true birthplace of sparkling wine. No, not the Champagne region. And there is a sparkler called Faire La Fête, made in the same method that reaches back nearly as far as Mardi Gras. It's the perfect sparkling wine to celebrate the festival. You'll hear about it later in the podcast. Now, let's head over to Paradise Ridge Winery. I wanted to have a casual conversation with owner and family member Rene Byck, so instead of using my usual handheld recorder, I opted for lapel mics so we could kick back on the leather couch in their new tasting room. I've come to know Rene pretty well over the last few years and was devastated when I heard the production facility and the tasting room burned in the October 2017 wildfires. It was a real pleasure to join him finally in the new space. So good to sit with you again.
Yeah.
It was so funny. A few weeks ago, I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd come by and see how the progress was going on the building, and much to my surprise, it was the first day of your soft opening.
Yeah, we opened on December 9th, and happy that date is behind us, and now we're settling into the new digs and getting acquainted with everything.
Boy, it's been an interesting couple of years, huh?
It has. It's been pretty much of a grind the whole time, and it doesn't seem to be letting up at the moment. But hopefully, we can get some of these attorneys and lawyers and insurance stuff behind us.
Another thing you want to get behind you.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm impressed with the property. I mean, we can talk more about this a little bit later, but it's very much the same footprint. We've talked about this before.
Yes, it is.
But certainly more modern, and not surprisingly, some amazing artwork behind your tasting bar there, which is you're well known for your artwork on the property. So.
Yeah, it's a place. When we rebuilt it, we really wanted people to feel like they were coming back to a place they had been before, and I think we accomplished that. It has a really similar look and feel, but like you said, more modern, and we got to kind of change some of the stuff that didn't work out as well the first time around. So we're happy to be back here, and we've had a lot of people coming in who are club members, people who've been married here before. There's a couple in yesterday. They got married 25 years ago.
Wow.
And they were sharing some pictures about that.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool to see how it looked even before the first remodel, which we did about 10 years ago. So, and a lot of people are really, really happy, and there's a lot of people who are still rebuilding their homes that are also coming up and really happy that we've opened, and it gives them, I think, a little bit more strength and motivation and excitement to get their houses done too, because there's a lot of people still in the rebuilding mode.
Yeah, from the outside, you think, well, you did a great job. This 2 years went by pretty quick, at least for me. But but it's very comfortable to be back here.
Yeah, well, I have to give kudos to my sister Sonia, who is the one who is the look and feel and all the colors and all the textures and the artwork and how things are set up is something that she does a very good job at, and we've had wonderful feedback from everybody who's visited us about how beautiful the place is, which makes those 2 years while they're in the past, but it makes us feel better about, the grind that we went through, and now we're getting some even more positive feedback from people, and it'll give us, the strength to keep going through everything we're going through until, we're kind of up and running at 100%, and all the homes on the property are rebuilt and all the buildings are rebuilt, which is not the case right now, but it's in the progress.
A couple more homes on the property?
Well, we're on home number 2, my dad is, and there's going to be 2 more homes built, and so he's almost halfway through of building of homes, and we still have our winemaking facility that we are planning on building as well, and but this was the event hospitality center was our concentration. It's what most people were familiar with our property. It's where we host events and our tasting room, and that had the number 1 priority of getting up and running, and now we'll work on some of the other stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned Sonia, and we were just talking about her husband, who is your winemaker.
Yeah.
So this is a true family business, isn't it?
It is. There's my sister and myself run the day-to-day operations. Her husband, Dan, is our winemaker. And we have other family members that work here, some of our staff, and have their kids working here. And so it does feel like a big family. See, Paige walked in, and that's her daughter.
Oh.
But we're open to, we are a family, and we welcome families.
And then I saw Annette when I was here last too. She's still working here.
She works here. Her son Chris works here. Her son Michael worked here. And before the fires, we had Martha, our event manager, and her husband worked here. And so we've had a lot of family members working here, and it's just part of our culture. And
I was happy to see Walter too when I came by that day a few weeks ago, and he's hanging in there, isn't he?
He's hanging in there. He's this year, 2020, he'll be 88 this year.
Wow.
And he's still running around with all these projects and keeping busy and enthusiastic about it all.
Oh, good. That's got to keep him going too, as well, I imagine.
Yeah, dude, he loves projects. He likes making things better and prettier, and that's what he's been doing. And obviously this building turned out well, and his houses he's really happy about. So, and I think he's actually going to move up here on the property in the second house when he finishes that, which will be nice because he comes here every day anyway. Might as well live here.
Right. Now, were you ever a project for Walter?
Me, a project? Yeah, I'm a project.
Has it been a while? Or are you still a project?
Well, there's 5 kids in our family, so there's he has different opinions about the different kids, but it's nice to be able to see him all the time and work here, and it's something that I enjoyed with my mother when she was around as well. That it's time that I can never really feel bad about spending and working and spending time with my family is something that's very nice and I enjoy. Most of the time.
I think we could all say that.
Yes.
When the fire occurred, the production facility burned as well.
Yeah.
And it was early October. I know you lost some wine. Was there juice in the fermentation tanks at that time still?
Yeah. We had just harvested and started fermentation of the 2017 harvest when the building was destroyed. So a lot of people were happy to hear that we harvested our grapes, but the whole building was. So we lost about almost 9,000 cases of wine, but we store a lot of our finished goods off-site, so we still had finished goods off-site, and then we were able to get some juice from different wineries that offered to help and support us so we can continue some of our programs that are more one-year program, like a Sauvignon Blanc and a Rosé. Those are things that when they were gone, we really needed to replace, or we lose some of our shelf space, which is kind of important to a lot of wineries and businesses. So we lost the winemaking facility, the hospitality center, 3 homes, 4 other structures, and we're about halfway rebuilt.
The vineyard survived, though, which they often do, and all of your artwork, surprisingly.
Yes.
You got plenty around the property. That was the biggest miracle of the whole thing.
I think so too. Is that all the artwork pretty much survived. The vineyards, even though initially we thought that we could have lost 20% of the vineyards, our 2018 harvest was larger than normal. We replanted some of the vineyards that were affected. We're also replanting some of the vineyards that we were planning on replanting as well. So some people look out, and there's a new vineyard out in front, and that was a planned replant that was not caused by the fire. It was more an opportunistic time to replace a vineyard that is important to a lot of our brides and people who have events here. They want to see vineyards. So when we had 2 years of no events, we thought it was a good time to replant.
A nicely placed vineyard setting, huh?
That's right. So we've replanted some of our late ripening reds with Zin, Petit Syrah, and some Syrah with Chardonnay, which is probably better for our spot here in the Russian River Valley.
Yeah. Did I see a couple pieces of new artwork the last couple of times I've been
here? There is some new artwork. The main one actually came in fairly soon after the fires. I want to say in early 2018 we got Storied Haven, which is the big boot. It looks like Mother Hubbard's boot or whatever. And so that's new. And obviously the piece behind the bar, which is probably our finest piece that we commissioned for to be built.
Let's tease my listeners a little bit and not say what it is, and see if when they come, if they can figure out what that represents.
What I can say is some people think that it's some of the leftover materials that we were able to salvage from the property, and that's not what it is.
Right. It's much too clean for that.
But it's something that we had Monty, a local artist, put together. We're really, really happy with it. It's a signature piece behind our tasting bar. It's called Cooper's Crest. That'll give you a little insight. Yes, it would be great if you could come up here and take a look and enjoy that, as well as the views and the wine.
Yeah, as you stand there at the bar and taste, you're looking right at it.
Yeah,
so that's nice. If you're familiar with the grounds, you know art is a major component of the winery. They also proudly share details about the history of the Fountain Grove area, which includes Japanese immigrant Kaie Nagasawa, who contributed much during his lifetime in Santa Rosa. They had an extensive display in the hospitality center that was tragically lost in the fire, and a prized possession that was feared lost forever, the samurai sword of Kaie Nagasawa. They were able to find the sword, which was an emotional discovery for the Byck family, and it is now once again on display.
Yes.
It burned in the fire, but you were able to locate that and you have it hanging there in its current form.
Yes. That is how the sword was found. It was our first objective in debris removal, was to try to locate the sword. We had a lot of people reaching out to us telling us that the samurai sword should have survived the fire. So, and when we found it, it made some national and international news, especially in Japan, that the sword was found, and it's part of our display.
Well, now it tells an even deeper tale.
Yeah, and it's something that we're proud of the history, Nagasawa's history, and that we get to tell his story about him growing grapes up here in the Fountain Grove area, and
in the 1800s.
In the 1800s, in the 1870s and 80s, they were growing grapes up here, and there's a huge influence that the Asian community had on the California wine industry that a lot of people are unfamiliar with, and so we proudly tell that story about Nagasawa, but also about their influence in creating the California wine industry.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice display you have there on the wall.
Yeah.
Getting back to the vintages, so you did have some white and rosé 2017. Did any reds come out of that, or?
We were able to we buy some fruit from the Rockpile AVA and from the Rockpile Vineyard, and after the fires, Rockpile wasn't affected, and there was still some fruit that was yet to be picked up in Rockpile, and we work with the Wilson family and Ken and Diane Wilson, and they let us pick some grapes that were earmarked for somewhere else so we can have some reds for the 2017 vintage. So we did that, and then unfortunately with this last fire, the Kincaid fire, they lost the Soda Rock Winery.
Right, the Wilsons,
and, and I've met with Ken and trying to help with giving some insight in the whole jumbled mess that happens when your winery burns down. And we're unfortunately or fortunately some of the only people to have experienced that, so I want to give that information to Ken and Diane on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that we felt with the fires.
Felt and are apparently still feeling from what you were telling me yesterday.
Yes, no, we are still feeling the effects. It's a difficult time. We're but you know, we're optimistic that in the end that we'll come out of this feeling good about what we've done in the past and the future. You know, one of the other things that we've been doing in this 2 years besides rebuilding is also we've relooked at our brand, and we'll be coming out with some new packaging and some new branding in the spring. And I don't think I've told anybody that, so it's breaking news.
Great, great.
But we're going to come out with new labels, a new look, and kind of a new story that is the story of me and my sister and our generation and future generations of our family. And we had been telling the story of my parents in the past, which we will never obviously forget. But, you know, we've come to realize that the community is very supportive of us, and a lot of people look at us as a gathering place to come with their families, and that's something we want to embrace, and supporting the arts and supporting nonprofits and you know, being sustainable, not just in growing of our grapes, but in paying of our employees and taking care of our entire property. So there's you know, another thing that's new that we started last year is we got a lot of grazing here on the property. So we're keeping the grass short with goats and soon to be cows and sheep.
Wow.
And we had some sheep here last year in our vineyards, and we're going to continue that program. And the Girl Scouts even came up and planted a bee habitat because a lot of the bee habitat was destroyed in the fire. So we like to be good stewards of the land and give back, and I think people like and appreciate that, and then want to support us even more, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody wins when that happens.
Right.
So I feel like we have a lot to offer a lot of different people, even people who don't drink can have a great wine country experience here.
Right, that's the great thing about this property. You can come spend a couple hours here easy without even tipping a glass.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we like to share. It sounds kind of funny, but it's something that we enjoy. And after the fires happened, we got a lot of people telling us how much they enjoyed our property, and it wasn't just about the wine, it was about the place and the people, and supporting of the arts and nature, and all of that kind of has worked out well, and we plan to continue to do that. And my parents, the Sculpture Garden is always going to be free, open to the public to enjoy.
Rene Byck of Paradise Ridge Winery. Now that they're back in operation with a new modern facility, it may come as no surprise that some positive changes will be in place, ultimately to benefit you, the consumer.
We do recommend that you make a reservation when you come and visit us, because in the spring we'll roll out some new tasting experiences, and we're feeling like we're going to be busier this summer than we were before the fires, and we want to be able to make sure people have the experience they want. So It's highly recommended that you make a reservation so we can make sure you're taken care of properly. And I believe and I hope that we will be full, and sometimes we might not be able to accommodate people if we're too busy. So to ensure that you have a nice experience up here, it is recommended that you let us know you're coming.
Glad you mentioned that.
But this is a place where you can have a glass of wine and watch the sunset and bring your family and friends, and we are kid friendly. So it's something that I've noticed since we've reopened, that we've gotten more families, you know, which I have young kids I was telling you about. I got an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. So I'm open to them as long as, you know, they behave and the parents watch them.
Yes.
And we will have things for them to do, like drawing. But it's something that it's nice to see. There's a lot of people who are happy we're back. The community suffered a lot in the last few years, and you live here, and I think a lot of your listeners live here in the Bay Area, and the best way to support Sonoma County and the communities affected by the fires, actually visit them and eat in their restaurants and visit their tasting rooms and stay in their hotels, because most of Sonoma County has been unaffected except for emotionally by the fires,
right.
Mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, there's nothing to fear about coming up here, and we could use everyone's support.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, you know. Sonoma County is an amazing place with redwood trees and the coasts and wine and beer and now cannabis.
Right.
You have to have a show called On the Cannabis Road.
Believe me, I've thought of that. When is the grand opening, by the way? Has that happened yet?
We're doing the soft opening. We're trying to find a good way to welcome the community back. We can't do a one-day event here because I think it would be too busy and it might not be a good experience for everybody. So we're playing with different things of, trying to get the community up here. Maybe we'll be offering, 2-for-1 tastings for everybody who comes in. And we still haven't figured it out, but in the spring, I'll reach out to you and let you know what the plan is. We have new tasting experiences coming in the spring, rebranding, new labels, kind of new logo, and so some of that's going to be happening in the next few months, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Well, great.
It's exciting,
let me know.
yeah.
Let me know, and I'll pass the word along to people when you get it all planned out.
And I really appreciate your support, and I love your show, and happy to come on it, and happy you're in the wine industry on another level as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually pouring wine now myself, so it's been fun. It's nice to be on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the pleasures of our industry is that most people who are visiting tasting rooms are in a good mood, and they're either on vacation or they have the time to relax and enjoy our property and wine country, and so usually it's a pretty joyous place to be around.
Definitely.
Which is nice.
Yeah, generating smiles. Great. All right, well, we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Owner and family member Rene Byck of the newly reopened Paradise Ridge Winery in Santa Rosa. The Kenwood location has continued to serve customers and remains open. A couple of things I didn't have time to share are the Santa Rosa location has a new VIP room, and they will continue their wine and sunset events, music, food trucks, and all that many people have come to love about spending time in Paradise. You can see an artist rendering of the new tasting and hospitality building and get more details at prwinery.com. And now it's time for Wine Uncorked. There's been a trend toward abstaining from alcohol lately or drinking no-proof mocktails. That's great. I think we could all step back once in a while. We know there are risks from drinking alcohol, but let me take a moment to share some of the recent studies concerning the benefits of wine consumption. A new study by a team from Sweden's Karolinska Institute and the UK's University of the West of England in Bristol suggests that moderate alcohol consumption may significantly lower the risk of lung disease in men. A recent study from Rush University in Chicago found that higher intake of flavanols, which are polyphenolic compounds found in fruits, vegetables, and wine, was associated with a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, especially when consumed later in life. That is, all three of those: fruits, vegetables, and wine. Researchers from Harvard University and Italy's Mediterranean Neurological Institute investigated the relationship between alcohol consumption and the risk of hospitalization and found that those who consumed roughly 1 drink per day endured fewer hospital visits compared with those who drank more or those who did not drink at all. That's remarkable. It also indicated a lower rate for cardiovascular disease. And researchers from University College London and the University of Cambridge found that those who consumed alcohol in moderation on a consistent basis were least likely to suffer a heart attack. Of course, there are many variables at play here, and the key emphasis in each of these studies is, quote, moderation. Once you go past the tipping point, wine can become dangerous for your body. Drink moderately, and you can enjoy the benefits of wine. As we get back on the wine road, here comes a history lesson. Did you know that sparkling wine was not invented in Champagne, but in southern France? Do you know how far back the Mardi Gras festival has been celebrated? Or have you heard of the sparkling wine that has historical roots to Mardi Gras? It's Faire La Fête Brut. And on the phone with me is the Honorable Master of Wine, Sommelier Peter Neptune, to fill us in. Peter, I have to say, I didn't know that sparkling wine is so closely tied to Mardi Gras, and I was not aware of Mardi Gras' historic tradition in France.
Well, yeah, it's funny. The fête, or the party, in Limoux, which is a little town near Carcassonne, and the famous castle there. It's the oldest and longest running, contiguously running Mardi Gras in the world, actually. It's interesting that the really famous, Mardi Gras New Orleans really began in the 1800s or so, and they've been doing the Fête in Limoux, which is a version of Mardi Gras because of the ties into the Mardi Gras calendar, Fat Tuesday, all of that. Goes back to the 1400s. Wow. And then in 1531, when sparkling wine was invented in Limoux, it kind of transferred from a celebration of grain, right, grain growers, to winemakers, because Limoux became really, justifiably famous, at least in the area, for creating this incredible thing called sparkling wine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did hear the original sparkling wine did not originate in Champagne, but in the south of France, which also relates to Pétillant Naturel, or Pétillant, that was created in the Méthode Ancestrale style. But Méthode Traditionnelle is another version?
Well, the original method is known now as Méthode Ancestrale. And, that's where you take kind of partially fermenting wine, you put it in a bottle, and you allow it to re-ferment, and the carbon dioxide that's produced is captured. And this is the ancestor, literally, Méthode Ancestrale, to what has now become known as Méthode Traditionnelle. The idea of, fermenting a wine in bottle the second time and to encourage those bubbles was also created in Limoux. Okay. And it was documented that in around 1531, that was happening in Limoux. So they created both the Méthode Ancestrale and what we now call the Méthode Traditionnelle. It's fascinating to think that in Champagne, at least until the late 1600s, the Champenois were trying to keep fermentation from happening. They thought it was a flaw, and they didn't recognize the beauty of sparkling wine. They actually thought when the sparkle happened accidentally after a cold winter up there in Champagne and the spring would start heating up, the bottles would begin re-fermenting, and the bottles would explode because they didn't have strong enough glass, and they thought it was the devil. They thought it was the devil's wine, and they were trying to keep the bottles from exploding, and they didn't know what to do. And meanwhile, down in Limoux, they're enjoying their sparkling wine, and in fact, during the Mardi Gras, they fill the whole fountain in the center of the town with sparkling wine. And the whole thing is about sparkling wine.
Wow.
It's really funny.
Too bad those times have changed a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny, on your website you talk about how those nasty farmers from Champagne came down and stole the recipe, and then they started making their own, and they changed the name to Méthode Champenois.
Exactly.
But that was like over 100 years later.
Well over 100 years later. I think the first Champagne house, the real first winery in Champagne, was Gosset in 1584, but they really weren't making champagne yet, because at that time it was warm enough in Champagne to make still wine. And in fact, the wines of Champagne, particularly the reds, because we all know that the three grape varieties allowed in Champagne are Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier, and Pinot Noir. The red wines competed with the wines of Burgundy for the favor of the king. And then the area went under kind of Champagne, the northern France, entered the mini ice age that lasted for about 100 years, and all of a sudden grapes weren't ripening to the level that you needed to make a good red wine. And the Champenois kind of were at odds. They didn't know what to do. And then late in the 17th century, they began to understand the potential beauty and desirability of sparkling wine and began to make it purposely. So around 1685 or so, but that's a long ways from 1531. That was when the first sparkling wine was made in Limoux.
Yeah, what a history. Sommelier Peter Neptune. In the Faire La Fête press release I received, in reference to the Champagne farmers who stole the recipe for sparkling wine, it said, "The Limoux proud growers were so busy partying on the stuff, they forgot to patent it. So they call their brut the original champagne. Although they can't put that on the label. Instead, they have to settle for the term crémant, which is used for sparkling wines made outside the Champagne region, crafted with the same secondary fermentation technique. A moment ago, we were touching upon the 3 grape varieties used in Champagne, which is made in the Méthode Champenoise style, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier, and Pinot Noir. In Faire La Fête's Méthode Traditionnelle style, the 3 grapes are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Chenin Blanc.
Yeah. You have those 2 traditional varieties, and then Chenin Blanc adds beautiful apple tones, good acidity to the blend, and a nice kind of texture. And of course, Chenin Blanc is widely used in the Loire Valley to make their version of sparkling wine, their Cremant de Loire, or the other Cremants that are produced in the traditional method. So Chenin Blanc's a really good sparkling wine grape for sure.
I don't know how many people are aware of this. I guess it depends on how much Mardi Gras you've been doing over the years, but the colors for Mardi Gras are purple and green, and those are the colors that are utilized on the Faire La Fête bottle.
Well, those are the colors. They are traditionally associated with Mardi Gras in the Limoux Fête, and the masking. You see the same masking and costumes, the green and purple colors, and what's really interesting is that all of that culminates in an auction, which is designed to raise money to help repair the bell towers in Limoux, these really ancient medieval bell towers. And there's 42 villages around Limoux that can make Cremant, and every year a different village gets the fête and the proceeds from the auction to work on their tower. So, about every 42 years, the fête comes back to your town and you get a little bit more work done on your tower. You imagine 42 years probably needs to be sandblasted and repaired and all that kind of stuff.
I love the fact that Faire La Fête translates to have a party, so a perfect name for Mardi Gras. And go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the sparkling that makes it such a wonderful wine, including its very affordable price.
Yeah, that's why I'm so enthusiastic about the wine. It's a beautiful traditional method sparkling wine that sees 15 months on tirage, or in the bottle on its leaves. So after it undergoes the second fermentation, the bottle is left, and the yeast that have done their job, they've created the bubbles. They basically they die, they fall to the bottom of the bottle, and they begin to break down. And that process is called autolysis. And the yeast molecules break down, and they release manoproteins into the wine that creates a creaminess and that beautiful brioche sourdough character that we love about fine champagne or fine sparkling wine. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating that it takes about 12 full months to really notice the effect of autolysis in a wine. And the fact that Faire La Fête spends 15 months on the lees or on tirage, and results in that creaminess that you get on the palate and this beautiful sense. It's like a gossamer mouthfeel that makes the sparkle so enjoyable. The fact that you can get all that for under $19.99 retail is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a time-consuming, hands-on process, and to be able to do that and to be able to have something like that available is really incredible. It's a tremendous value in the world of wine, no question about it. And why I'm so enthusiastic about the wine.
Yeah. And the website compares the Faire La Fête sparkling to Veuve Clicquot and Moet à Chandon champagne. So for the price, you can't beat it.
Oh yeah, no, I've actually done blind tastings using my WSET diploma students as guinea pigs, We've done blind tastings with Faire La Fête alongside key sparkling wines from around the world, including well-known champagne brands, some California sparkling brands, some South African sparkling brands. And Faire La Fête does consistently well, consistently in the top 3, believe it or not, at nowhere near the price points of particularly the champagnes, which command, obviously very high price points in the marketplace. So for the consumer who enjoys sparkling wine and maybe where champagne would be something that you're going to order on your birthday or on your wedding anniversary, I always like to tell my students that sparkling, in terms of the home chef, I have Neptune rule number 32A, when in doubt, in terms of food and wine pairing, when in doubt, sparkling wine.
Right.
The sparkling wine really goes with everything. It's a really, the combination of carbon dioxide and bright, crisp acidity makes for a sure bet when you're especially matching with difficult foods like artichokes or salads or soups, past appetizers. You might throw a dinner party where you have both fish and a poultry, and so it's hard to match wines, and sparkling wine is really, really copacetic with a number of different food ingredients. And for the price point, all of a sudden you can pour a really, really high-quality sparkling wine in Faire La Fête and do that every night of the week.
Yeah. And the sparkling consumption has certainly been a trend lately, more often than it used to be. Yeah. And the fact that it's 30% less residual sugar makes it even more of a bonus.
Yeah, that's also a big selling point and a big plus, particularly people who are trying to keep their sugar consumption to a minimum. The dosage of Faire La Fête is well below the dosage of most commercial champagnes that are well known and on the supermarket shelf.
One of the reasons this low-cost sparkling tastes so good is the soil, or terroir. It's grown on hillsides that contain a mix of clay and chalky limestone.
The limestone in Limoux is fantastic. I mean, it's a great terroir, and what makes limestone so great is that particularly Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Chenin Blanc perform admirably, in fact, at their best in limestone. So when you combine that with the fact that the vineyards of Limoux are in the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains, that of course separate France from Spain, that means they're seriously elevated, very cool, and you've got beautiful diurnal swings between daytime and nighttime temperature, which again is perfect for retaining the acidity in the grapes, which is essential for the production of quality sparkling wine.
Right.
You have to have that brightness and crisp acidity in the base wine to have a successful sparkling wine. So the terroir in Limoux is fantastic. It's a great terroir for sparkling wine, every bit as good as the terroir in Champagne.
Fantastic. Is Faire La Fête released seasonally like Beaujolais Nouveau?
Well, it's bottled seasonally, but it's a non-vintage product, so we're able to bring it to the market after it's bottled. Again, remember its second fermentation happens in bottle, and then the wine remains 15 months, and then of course it's disgorged and brought to the market.
Okay, so it doesn't get released in a seasonal manner like Beaujolais Nouveau. However, Fat Tuesday and Mardi Gras can always be expected in the same short amount of time between February 3rd to March 9th, and then the revelers can Faire La Fête.
Well, the Faire La Fête literally means to party. Faire in French is a verb like to make or do. And so literally when you open a bottle of Faire La Fête, you are opening a bottle that is hopefully going to create a convivial atmosphere. And whether you're at home on a Tuesday night or throwing a dinner party on Saturday night, I love the idea that sparkling wine is a party in a glass for sure, and to be able to do that every night of the week affordably, I think is really fantastic. I mean, I always like to say, a glass of sparkling wine is certainly a great way to lift your spirits and create a little bit of a party, at least for the moment.
Right. Living life to the fullest.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Peter, for taking the time to open our eyes to Faire La Fête. And I know I'm inspired to get a bottle as soon as I possibly can, and I'm looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, seriously. It's I love the whole concept of, having a party and having a party in a glass and being able to do that at a really reasonable price and be able to do that on more than a special occasion. And I urge your listeners who are enthusiastic home chefs or, anybody out there who likes to go out to dinner. I mean, sparkling wine is a great accompaniment to a huge variety of flavors and tastes and textures. And I would leave your listeners with, drink more sparkling wine for sure. And if Faire La Fête's one of them, that would certainly be a great thing.
Well, cheers to that. Thank you, Peter.
My pleasure. Thanks for the call.
I did get a bottle of Faire La Fête after I recorded the interview, and I like it. I'll admit I'm not as much a fan of Brut sparklings, preferring like a Blanc de Noir and even sparkling Syrahs, wines with more depth of flavor. But I enjoy the notes of baked apple and lemon meringue on the Faire La Fête, with that creamy texture Peter mentioned. If you want to pick up a bottle for your Mardi Gras party, in California you can find it in some Vons, Pavilions, Safeway, and Rayleigh stores, but the easiest would be to order from VinusReverie.com. Vinus, V-I-N-O-U-S, Reverie, R-E-V-E-R-I-E.com. In the stores, look for the bottle's light purple foil and green label. It's great for Mardi Gras or any time. It is, after all, a party in a glass. Hey, thanks for listening today. You can find my past interviews at onthewineroad.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at JDWineroad. Music on my podcast comes from FirstCom. If you would, please subscribe to On the Wine Road and rate it on iTunes. I'd greatly appreciate it. Until we meet again on the Wine Road, bottoms up.